actually what God wants us to do is go, no, it's all about you, and it's all about your kingdom and your power and your glory. And so I'll just submit to you. And if we do that, actually it puts us in that place of surrender rather than pursuing our ambition, fulfilling our appetite and getting the approval for ourselves. I think it's this upside down kingdom again.
Welcome to the Prophecy Project, an accessible prophecy podcast. In each episode, we explore some aspect of prophecy, from theology and practical aspects of hearing God, through to leading healthy prophetic cultures and exploring how prophecy can enhance local mission. Accessible Prophecy is a global ministry that helps individuals grow in the prophetic and helps local churches grow healthy and mature prophetic cultures. And now, here are your hosts, Andrew Hill and Christine Wanstall.
Well, welcome to the Prophecy Project podcast, an accessible prophecy podcast. How are you, Chris?
I'm very well, thanks, Andrew. How are you?
Did I actually get it right?
You did get it right.
Well,
I thought, we've got it right, and we're going to start a podcast without referencing whether we got the title right. But no. We're back in the...
We're back in the zone. We're back in the zone.
Back in the zone. People go, tick. All right, let's move on.
Nice to be chatting.
It is good to be chatting. What's God been saying to you lately, Andrew?
Quite a bit in a few different ways. Throw me under the bus. Don't get me warmed up or anything. Don't let us sort of warm into this. Wow, straight into it. Yeah. And throw me under the bus straight away.
I can hear Rich Robinson in my head go, that's such a classic prophet thing. You just go deep so fast, prophets don't, just dive in the deep end.
No relational warmth. How are you going, Chris? Have you settled back into life after being at the global gathering?
So what's God been saying?
Oh, so funny, isn't it? That's good. Well, let me backtrack. Yeah, how's life? Have you been settling back in after being at the global gathering of accessible prophecy in the UK? You settling back in?
I have been settling back in, and it's we're sort of 2.5 weeks back, and I so missed family. It's so great to be back in the rhythm of catching up with family again, and jumping back into work and AP stuff. And we met last night as an Australian team, and we've got some exciting plans for next year. So I'm pretty excited about what the next 6 to 12 months is looking like. How about you, Andrew?
That's good. I am looking forward to it. Life is good. I know that this is going to sound very indulgent, but I don't feel old enough to have a daughter who just turned 30. Our eldest daughter turned 30 last week, and tell you what, it's crazy, but it's a great season. It was a great season. Yeah. So we went away as a family for the weekend and just enjoyed life together. And it's lovely to be able to do that, to be able to celebrate the kids. And
it's so good.
Have fun. So life is good. Ministry's good. Church is good. Yeah, it's a good season. Really good season. So
but what's God been saying to you, Andrew? We're a prophecy podcast.
He's been saying a lot, actually. Well, I feel like he's been saying a lot. A few weeks ago, I sort of felt like that he was wanting us to turn up the dial on prayer within our church, and not that we don't pray. Actually, we pray a lot, but just make it more accessible for people. And so we took a couple of different steps as a team to I guess make that happen, and I feel like the level of prayer, that of interaction with prayer, not the level of prayer, the level of interaction with prayer, from people who are just going through stuff has actually, lifted within the life of our church. And I go, oh, that's good. That's a good thing. When people are saying, actually, I need people to be praying on my behalf and interceding on my behalf, and seeking God for me, that sort of stuff is really good. And then even on a personal note, I just feel like God's doing some whispering about some stuff. And we were talking actually last night about some stuff that you'd heard at the global gathering. So why don't you give us some insight on what you heard, and then maybe we can bounce out of that as to what sort of God's been saying to us around some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So what did you hear?
What did I hear?
I'm
Well,
interested.
last
You can see me
podcast,
leaning in. If you can't see me, I'm leaning in.
and your voice gets deeper. I'm
It does.
intrigued.
It does. I'm intrigued.
Um, so last podcast we talked about, I shared about how I had this image, I felt it was from Jesus, around dancing with Jesus and just what it looked
Yeah.
like to interact with him. And just again, that has been so special the last couple of weeks, spending time. I've created a little space upstairs, and I just head over to that space and just sit and play worship music and just dance with Jesus. I don't physically dance, by the way, but it's been really interesting, the things that start to get unpacked personally when you become aware of what it should feel like in terms of the freedom. And am I feeling like I'm carrying things? And all right, Jesus, show me what I'm carrying. And so it's just been really interesting. Like, fear has been one thing that's been obvious around, what are you being fearful of, what are you afraid of, and just allowing Jesus to deal with those things and speak into those spaces has been really, really special. But
Yeah.
one of the things that we talked about at Global Gathering we just spent some time thinking about that last phrase in the Lord's Prayer: for yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. And those three words, kingdom, power, glory. And it was just really interesting. Kath did some fantastic content with us around each of those three particular elements. And I think I talked a little bit last time about, the rebellious heart, and how do we bring disruption as prophets without being rebellious? How do we have a surrendered heart without that sense of rebellious, but bring the disruption that's natural as a prophet? We want people to encounter God, and that can be quite disruptive. And we want to be a voice to the voiceless, and we want to see injustice addressed. And so those things can be really tricky as prophets to hold. But the three terms, kingdom, power, and glory, are really interesting to start unpacking and just thinking about what is it about those three elements, and how do they interact with us as prophets? How does the prophetic sit within those three?
Yeah. And it's interesting because one of the roles of the prophet is to, to call things out, to point people back to God. And it was interesting when you were sharing that last night. I think one of the things that sort of really occurred to me was, even when we talked last time on the podcast about, the celebrity pastor syndrome and what happens with them. And I suddenly had this thing about, for yours is the power, yours is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. And it's like, are they the things that actually get in our way sometimes? Is it about me building my kingdom? Is it about me getting more power? Is it about me getting the glory? And, it's that sort of thing. And it continues to remind me of, that whole idea that, when Jesus was in the wilderness, Satan came to him and, do this 3 times, and so, and it comes back to that, that selfish ambition, is it ambition that's driving us, all those sorts of things? Is it appetite? What are the appetites that we're trying to go after? And I think in that whole idea of kingdom, power, glory, I just continue to ask, whose kingdom are we trying to, pursue, and whose kingdom are we trying to be part of? And I can see you're now leaning in, which is really interesting. Come on,
it's
talk to
really,
me.
like, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's the those approval, appetite, ambition, those three elements for us are the three things Satan uses to really draw us away from Jesus, to draw us away from deeper walk with God. And so we are talking this season, in this podcast season, about how do we grow deeper? How do we get to that next space with God, that deeper space in our spiritual walk? And I think there's such close alignment. How do we surrender everything? How do we let go of ambition? How do we deal with the insecurity that is about approval? And how do we lessen the wants that we feel like we have, our appetites, to then go, Lord, it's about your kingdom, it's about your power and your glory.
Absolutely.
And that can look very different in different spaces. So I think it's the culture tells us that power is all about notoriety or being able to make decisions, control, all of those dynamics that sit there. And yet I suspect God's kingdom looks quite different. So one of the key questions I have, because around that Kat's content, and I'm looking at my notes, she talked about we need to reset our personal vision of Jesus.
Yeah.
And have a sense that he is bigger than we can ever imagine.
Yeah.
And she contrasted Ezekiel and Revelation, sort of bookended Old New Testament,
Wow.
and John's vision in Revelation of the glory of God, the glory that's surrounded. And so I get challenged by each of these elements. By the glory element, do I have a big enough vision of Jesus? And with the kingdom, am I trying to push through my own agenda, or am I surrendering to be an empty vessel for what God has? And do I have the courage to step in with the power that he wants to give me?
Yeah.
Because I sometimes think we have this false sense of humility where we step back, but actually if God empowers us, if God gives us his power, it's for a purpose. And often it's because he wants us to step into situations, to seek reconciliation, to draw people back to Jesus in a whole range of different ways. And so do we have the courage to step in with his power, not out of our own strength? So all three of those words do my head in, because they're so, like, each one of them is just so deep and so complex in terms of how we approach it, how we think about it, how we interact with Jesus about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that whole idea of, if we're saying, the kingdom, the power and the glory are yours, isn't that like it's the ultimate act of surrender, I think? When you say, okay, so it's totally not about me. My identity's not in, my identity's found in you. It's actually not my kingdom I'm trying to build. It's not me trying to get any power. It's not me trying to get the glory. It's not, look at me, how good am I, how good my ministry is, or whatever, which actually feeds our appetite for success. It feeds our will for ambition, and it definitely plays into the whole approval culture that, we're a part of. We're putting our best things on Facebook or Instagram or whatever social media thing that we are a part of. And therefore, and it is, look at me to get the likes, to get the followers and all those sorts of things. And it just plays into all that nature. But actually what God wants us to do is go, no, it's all about you. And it's all about your kingdom and your power and your glory. And so I'll just submit to you. And if we do that, actually it puts us in that place of surrender rather than pursuing our ambition, fulfilling our appetite and getting the approval for ourselves. I think it's this upside down kingdom again.
I think Dallas Willard might have said a few things about that.
I think he did. It's worth reading that book.
I know. I heard someone recently talk about what one word would you use to describe Jesus? And Dallas Willard turned around and his one word was relaxed.
Wow.
He was relaxed.
Wow.
Because he knew his place in the kingdom. He knew who his father was. Yeah. He knew that, like, it makes sense to me, if we truly live into that space, that God will provide what we need, that our identity is formed by him, that we are unconditionally loved by him, that we are more important to him than the birds of the air, and that he knows us intimately. Jesus knew all of that and knew that the kingdom's resources were available to him to do what the Father wanted him to do. So he was relaxed.
Yeah.
And he relaxed into the kingdom. And
so it's not a striving thing. It's not
struggle.
Oh, I've got to strive to get this and do this, and I've got to. It's It's a totally different posture, isn't it?
It's very different, but I think for us, what we're doing is trying to unpack or unlearn all of the years of how the world's told us we need to be, and really, it's focusing, that space of how big's my vision of Jesus? Do I actually recognize who he is and who I am in relation to him? And so the prophetic cry to try and help people connect with God's heart, to try and pull them back to Jesus, to interact with Jesus and to be filled with the Holy Spirit, that makes sense to me around this tension of emptying ourselves, surrendering everything we have to then be filled by the Spirit. And so I think there's this real challenge that, sadly, I don't think it happens all at once. Like, we know we're works in progress, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Like, I remember when we were, in a previous church and that we were in, and I was really struggling, and we'd only been there 2 months. And I remember at midnight one night, on my knees before God, going, Lord, I know you've got us here to teach us stuff. I'm here, teach me now. And then, so then we can just move on.
Yeah.
And then the response, it was almost like me going, all right, God, just in the next 30 seconds, just fill me with everything you want me to understand and learn, and then we can just move on. And
how'd that work out for you?
Yeah, that's so the response I got back, the thought that popped in my head, which we know is often God, was when you learn to love them, then let's talk again. And I just went, oh, that's not what I expected.
Yeah.
Oh, that takes time. We just need to move on.
Yeah.
So I think it's that progress, like we want it to happen now, but actually it's the work in progress, and allowing God to take us deeper, allow God to peel back the onion layers and show us what that's all about.
But do you think what God was doing in that moment, like bringing you to that point, it's almost like that, I don't know, that intersection point around, okay, Chris, I want you to learn more about this, push you into that area. And yes, that learning takes time, but it's almost like comes to a crunch and then moving forward
There's
from
breakthrough.
Yes. Yeah.
I feel like that has been a pattern with God, that there's either frustration building, or there's discontent that I have, or there's something that's churning in my soul, and there's a point that I surrender or there's breakthrough. But I think I suspect they both happen at a similar time, where I just go, God, I can't do this anymore, or God, this is yours, or I've tried my best. What do you have for this? And so it comes, I've just heard myself say, I've tried my best. I've done what I can do. Lord, because we were talking about we shouldn't be striving, like in the kingdom. It's a sense of us operating out of God's resources. So maybe I need to look at that a little.
Well, let's not challenge ourselves too much in the podcast.
I've got enough challenge in my life.
Yes, that's right. But it's interesting because when you said, what the one word that Dallas Willard used, I went, see, the first word that pops into my brain is friend. And then when you said relaxed, I went, because friendship is not about striving. Friendship, you can just be who you are and there's acceptance and there's a relaxed, like when I just hang out with my friends, we're relaxed. You know, you're not trying to put on the airs and graces, or you're not trying to live up to expectations. It's like, you're just who you are, and there's an acceptance there. So there is, I think Dallas Willard is right, in terms of that relaxed nature and that ability to just be is very different to what the world says that we have to do, and, put on whatever show that you need to at any point in time, which I just think, we've got to get past. We really have to get past.
It's really interesting because one of the things I've been pondering is the challenge across the church that I've heard, and it's not specific to denominations, but this challenge around engaging young adults and youth. And it's been a perennial question for like generations. How do we stop the exodus out of the church? But one of the things that's been recently discussed is that the current sort of 18 to 30-year-olds are not so much interested in the show or the production or the value, like whether it's excellent. They're more interested in genuine, transformative relationships and genuine, that genuine depth to relationships and genuine care. And I think that really is hard for some of us of our generation, when our whole life in church our adult life in church has been about how do we provide a really good program? How do we provide something people will engage with, people will appreciate? And I think there's some subtle differences. And I think it comes to our relationship with God as well, that younger people, I wonder if they're searching for a genuine relationship with Jesus, and it's not so important what the packaging is.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think you're right. I think the authenticity factor of church these days, like I remember there's a photo of me when I was probably about 4, and I've got, my Sunday best on, my little brown suede jacket and
Did
my
you have a tie?
little tie.
Just a little tie?
Little blue shirt and a tie. And,
can you just post it on Facebook for us?
No. I might leave that one, because actually you would never recognise me. But anyway, and now, but now, like even that, like we don't dress up and, become something we're not when we go to church. We're just everyday people. And I love that, idea of we are everyday people who are pursuing and encountering and experiencing God. And so, you come dressed as you are, so your jeans and your T-shirt is fine, and that's good, because that's actually, that's who we are, and it reflects who we are. And I think that whole idea of being authentically you on the platform, off the platform, in the supermarket, when you're driving your car, all that sort of stuff actually plays into it. You're not one person on the platform and off the platform. You are just you. And I think we've got to create cultures, and maybe that's the role of the prophet at the moment. Maybe. I'm just saying. I'm not processing this, so maybe
I can
we'll
see
cut
the
that out of the
clenched
podcast.
jaw going, should I be saying this in public?
Yeah, but this whole thing of maybe we just have to demonstrate authenticity and vulnerability. Like where are our stories, the struggles that we have, the, appropriate struggle, appropriate vulnerability maybe is the term, but maybe we just have to be real about, I'm struggling to hear God at the moment, or actually I heard God about this, and maybe he's putting his finger on something that I have to wrestle through. And I think that helps people identify with the reality of where we are all at. God brings us to intersecting moments and wants to take us deeper, and so will we surrender to him. And so, and the struggle in that and the reality of that is good. Even, how are we pursuing God in our prayer life? How are we, are we creating time, like Brandon was talking to us in that last series, about, taking those times of pause and moments to slow down. Like, are we doing that? Yeah, so some of these things I think are actually things that we could develop and we could put into our lives really easily and see what God does as a result of it. Just thinking.
How are you going to do that, Andrew? Oh my gosh, throw you under the bus twice in one.
My gosh, yeah, the bus is backing over me now. It's rolled over me forwards, and now, look, most people who listen to the podcast know I embarked on that 40-day prayer journey last year, and I have to say, honestly, it changed my life. Absolutely, honestly, changed my life, and is still changing my life today. So every day I'm praying about stuff, drawing circles, because that was part of the book that I read, draw the circle and that sort of stuff. So I draw a circle and I put these things in there, and I'm praying for people's healing. I'm praying for people to meet God, and I'm praying for, finances for a church, and, all that sort of stuff, provision and protection, and for family members, and healing for friends who are going through, journeys of, cancer treatment, all that sort of stuff. And I have to say, time after time after time, and it is not me, please hear this, but I think God is just proving himself faithful in all that. And because I'm writing it down, I'm remembering what he does. And so there are times when I might feel like, oh God, are you actually listening to me? Or are you there? And suddenly I realize, actually, yes, he is, because remind yourself, Andrew, he's been doing this. Remind yourself, Andrew, he's been doing this. And that is good, like, for us to remind ourselves. It does what, the Bible talks about, David did, he built himself up in the Lord, and so he reminds himself of all the things that God has been doing for us, in us, through us. And I think those things are really, really good for us to remember. So I've been doing that. And I think I'm going to continue to do that. Yeah.
So if we think where we
keep going.
You've slid out from under the bus.
Yep, maybe.
Just wait for the next one. So if we go back to where we started and we talked about kingdom, power, and glory. For yours is the kingdom, yours is the power, yours is glory, and your observation that it's God's power, God's kingdom, God's glory that that prayer proclaims. Jesus shows this is the way you should pray. Yours is the kingdom, and that really challenges me about how am I seeking after God's kingdom and emptying myself, surrendering what I'm doing in that space. It's I sit there thinking, how can we encourage people to get the bigger vision of Jesus, to realize what he has that is ours to step into. But I do come back, I feel like there's this tension around humility versus courage, but I don't think they're opposite. Like, I feel like we go, oh, we're emptying ourselves and therefore I can't do anything. But I think we should be, like, I think that means that we should actually be doing more. Like, does that make sense?
Oh, totally. It was interesting last time I shared that picture that Troy developed, our 1 foot in our humility, 1 foot in humanity. And then, if you imagine a person in a star jump position, that one arm is our convictions, but one arm is compassion. And so, there's this posture that we have to take, and Jesus, right in the middle of all of that, he's the one who gives us courage not only to hold to our convictions, but do it balancing compassion for people, and Jesus did that so, so well. And yet at the same time, you've got a foot planted in your humility, and a foot planted in the humanity in which we live. And it's like, you put all that together, it does take courage to pursue Jesus and say, Jesus, what are you saying in this situation? And how do I need to act? How do I need to think? How do I need to respond? And that is like that's an ultimate challenge, but a really good posture to hold, I think. And so, I think for me, that is a continual challenge. I think pastorally. I have a pastoral concern for people, and I try and read the Bible with that holding that pastoral concern for people who are wrestling with things in my mind. So, all these things we try and give to Jesus and say, well, it's your kingdom, it's your power, and everything has to be for your glory in all that I do.
Yeah.
What about you, Chris? Here comes the bus.
Beep, 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 beep. Well, I think for me, I come back to, as you were talking then, I was just, I finished these podcasts a little tired because I feel like we externally process so much stuff over this half hour. It comes back to the dance with Jesus because I feel like I started a couple of months ago going, Lord, I want to go deeper. I want more of you. I want to steward the gift, the prophetic gift that you've given me. I want to steward that well. I want to be diligent in how I do that. My personality is that I'm a doer. So if I am like, well, I need to improve, then I think, how do I do that? What do I need to do? And so this gift of this dance with Jesus is countercultural. It's the upside down world, as we talked about around actually Jesus. I feel like Jesus is saying, just come dance with me. Stop making your growth, your spiritual growth, as a task on your to-do list, and engage with me in relationship, and let's see what is revealed. So I feel like there probably are personality types or people with personalities that are the doers that actually Jesus might be encouraging. If you want to grow deeper in your relationship with me, it's not a task. It's actually, find some way to relate to me and allow Jesus to reveal that. But if you're more contemplative, or if you're more of that, I'm not sure what Jesus has, maybe, you need to be doing something to stretch yourself. So I feel like for me, the invitation is to deepen the relationship. I can't remember whether I shared last time, one of the things I felt God say was, I'm pretty sure I did, this sense of more. Like, what if I want to give you more? And you're saying that you're okay. Are you open to actually receiving more if things are going okay? And so for me, I sit there thinking, I hope I don't just go to God when things are a struggle. I hope I'm going to him every day to say, Lord, I want more of you. I want to be filled. I want to surrender what I have to then be filled and do what you want me to do. So that's my little ramble. I feel like it's still just the dance with Jesus.
It's good. Because I think the fact that you're open to, even assume that position, you think of dancing, I'm not talking about disco, but, that whole idea of,
the ball dance.
The open ballroom dance position, to be able to go, okay, come, lead me, come, take me, move
wherever
me.
you like.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that in itself, again, is, just a beautiful picture of going deeper with God.
So much layers, so many layers with it, which is good. I love that every single time there's just more and more that we can unpack with it. But our time is up, I think, Andrew.
It is indeed. It's been nice talking with you, Chris, and been nice being able to share with you who are listening today, who are engaging with us over the various platforms that we engage across. And we always love to hear from people as to whether these different things are helpful. So, if you're finding things helpful, or if you have questions you want us to explore, feel free. How do they do that, Chris?
There's information in the podcast information blurb. I don't know what it is. Whatever that sits underneath the podcast, the words and stuff, there'll be something there.
Yeah, you can interact there. Yeah. Hit us up on our emails or something. Send us something. I can hear the
team just going, oh, come on, do better.
That's good. That's how it all starts, isn't it? Oh,
It
yeah,
is.
we had this. Oh, we probably need to make that a
Yeah.
bit clearer. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
okay. But yeah, hit us up with an email, hit us up with with a question somewhere along the lines, and we'll put it on the podcast and chat about it. But it's been great talking
Absolutely.
today. All the best and
See you
blessings on
soon.
you in all of your ministries. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Prophecy Project. We hope you've been encouraged as you've listened today. We would love to connect with you. You can do that by following Accessible Prophecy on Instagram and Facebook. If you have a question or topic you would like us to cover, please check the podcast information description for ways that you can connect with us and for links to resources, workshops, and coaching. We hope you'll join us for the next Prophecy Project podcast.